Good afternoon, and thanks, colleagues, for joining. I really appreciate that you took your time to come and join us in this conversation that talks about stakeholder engagement, complexities, and challenges and opportunities in advancing socio-economic development through mining sector. This is a South African perspective, but before I go on, let me declare that I'm doing this as a founder and a trustee of Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. So the views that I'm raising here are not the views of any company, but the views of Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. The other thing that we are going to do now is just to give you a presentation flow. Firstly, I'll give you an introduction around the mining sector in South Africa, and also give you an overview on the mining within various provinces, and give you stakeholder complexities and challenges and opportunities that we should pursue. Firstly, let me first indicate that we have got a Freedom Charter that was adopted in 26 June 1965. And the Freedom Charter is very clear when it says the people shall share in the country's wealth. And when you go deeper into the Freedom Charter, it says the national wealth of our country, the heritage of all South Africans, shall be restored to the people. The mineral wealth beneath the soil, the banks, the monopoly industry shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. That's an extract from the mining charter. What I want you to remember in our discussion today is that the national wealth of our country, the heritage of all South Africans. So it is for all South Africans, not a particular few, or those who are closer to those resources. It's for all South Africans. And the Freedom Charter talks about transferring this mineral wealth to the ownership of the people as a whole, not only the few or those who are closer to those mineral wealth. But also, the South African mining industry is governed by various regulations. And one of those regulations is the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act. This act was enacted in 2002. Colleagues will remember that we had elections in 1994. So between 1994 and 2001, we have been using acts that most of them were previously inherited from the apartheid regime. So the Minerals and Petroleum Resources Development Act was enacted in 2002. I want to focus on specific items within that act. And the section that I want to focus on is section 3 of that act that talks about the custodian of the nation's mineral and petroleum resources. I'll encourage colleagues to go and get this act and read it thoroughly, so that when we talk mining and or mineral and petroleum resources in this country, we'll be informed by this law. Maybe in future we can also consider making some amendments to this law in order to radically transform our society in terms of economy. If you look at section 3.1 of the Mineral Petroleum Resources Act, where it talks about custodianship, it says the mineral and petroleum resources are the common heritage of all the people of South Africa. If you look at that sentence, it was directly taken from the Freedom Charter. In the Freedom Charter, they say the national wealth of our country, the heritage of all South Africans. But when now in the MPRDA, it says the mineral and petroleum resources are the common heritage of all the people of South Africa. The same clause of the MPRDA section 3.1 says the state is the custodian thereof for the benefit of all South Africans. If you go back to the Freedom Charter, it says the mineral wealth beneath the soil shall be transferred to the ownership of the people as a whole. So by looking at this act, the act puts the state as the custodians of the mineral and petroleum resources on behalf of the people. So the state becomes the custodians of these mineral resources on behalf of the people. So if in your own area or your own farm, there are minerals, those minerals belongs to the state, to the people of the country, but the custodian is the state. So any minerals in this country and petroleum resources belongs to the people of the country as a whole. And it belongs, the custodian thereof is the state. The MPRDA indirectly nationalized the mineral resources, indirectly. Because now the mineral resources are owned by the people of the country and the custodian thereof is the state. I'm sure this one, we have covered it, and I've tried to link in this MPRDA with the Freedom Charter. Because the Freedom Charter also talks about the national wealth of our country, the heritage of all South Africans. And it talks about transferring this national heritage and the minerals to the ownership of the people. Then the MPRDA moves further and transfer these minerals to the people, but in the custody of the state. But let's look at the objects of the mineral the MPRDA. In particular, section 2 of the MPRDA. I'm trying to build up a case for our conversation going forward. And I'm putting this as a basis so that when we're discussing this, we should be knowing that there is a law that governs the minerals and petroleum resources in this country. When you look at the objects of the MPRDA, in particular section 2, I'll go to section 2B. It says the object of this act are to give effect to the principle of the state's custodianship of the nation's minerals and petroleum resources. So the act, like I said, gives the state custodianship of the minerals on behalf of the people of the country, all the people of the country. The act also goes further and saying the object of this act is to promote equitable access to the nation's mineral and petroleum resources to all the people of South Africa. So the act says we must promote equitable access to this nation's mineral and petroleum resources. All of us as the people of this country, we must have equitable access of these mineral resources. Not a particular few or people who were born within the areas where there are minerals, or people who are related to those who have got shares in this mineral. It says, this act, there must be a promotion of equitable access of this nation's mineral wealth. If you look at section F, subsection F of section 2 of the MPRDA, it says, promote employment and advance the social and economic welfare of all South Africans. So this act says, through these mineral and petroleum resources, we must promote employment and advance the social and economic welfare of all South Africans. Our focus today is about stakeholder engagement complexities, challenges, opportunities in advancing socio-economic transformation through the mining sector, and I'm giving South African perspectives. So in giving South African perspectives, I'm laying the foundation by giving the law that governs that sector. If you go on the objects, particularly on I, please focus on those subsections that I've bolded them. It says the object of this act are to ensure that the holders of the mining and production rights contribute towards the socio-economic development of the areas in which they are operating. So the act says, if you're holding a mineral right, given by the state to hold a mineral right, what you call a mining license, you are obliged to contribute towards the socio-economic development of the areas in which you are operating. So if you're a mine operating in Attreville or Zimanyane, you are obliged to contribute towards the socio-economic development of the area in which you're operating. But that does not stop you to promote employment and advance social economic welfare of all South Africans, because it's part of the objects of the act. Because also the act says we must promote equitable access to the nation's minerals and petroleum resources to all people of South Africa. So in order to advance the objects of the MPRDA, if you look at section 100, subsection 2A, the MPRDA empowers the minister to develop a broad-based Black economic empowerment charter for the South African mining and mineral industry. So this is what we call a mining charter. So the minister is empowered by MPRDA to develop what we call a mining charter. But in terms of the legal language, it's being called the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Charter for the South African mining and minerals industry. The first mining charter in this country was adopted in 2004. 10 years after elections. That was the first time we adopted the mining charter. One can just make a calculation and say between 1994 and 2004, what was happening? Because the first mining charter was developed in 2004. 2 years after MPRDA was enacted. So we are now on the third mining charter, mining charter 3. The first one was done in 2004, and there were some revisions, I think in 2010, and there were been revision back and forth. But the last, the third one that is governing the mining industry now is the mining charter 3, which was enacted around 2018. In September, if I'm not wrong. If you look at the mining charter, and I'll beg colleagues to follow me here, because the mining charter is a tool now to advance the objects or the objectives of the MPRDA. The mining charter becomes a tool to advance the objectives of the MPRDA. The mining charter has got 5 elements, and 5 elements only. The first element is on ownership, and I'll explain these elements when we go forward. The first element is ownership. The second element is mine community development. No, there are 6 elements, not 5. 6 elements. The second one is housing and living conditions. The fourth one is employment equity. The fifth one is inclusive procurement and supplier and enterprise development. And the sixth one is human resource development. I said we've got 6 elements in the mining charter, and the mining charter is a tool to advance the objectives of the MPRDA, which one of those objectives is to address issues of employment and socio-economic development. Let's look at the element of ownership. The ownership element in the mining charter talks about the percentage of ownership in the mine by the historically disadvantaged persons. The mining charter 3 talks about 30% of the mine should be owned by historically disadvantaged persons. The previous mining charter, which I should call mining charter 2, was talking about 26%. The new mining charter talks about 30%. And if you look at the measure, it says 5% of that should be owned by the employees. The 5% must be owned by the employees. The other 5% must be owned by a host community. A host community is where the mine is operating. So the host community must own 5%. The employees must own 5%. And the remaining 20%, it will be in the form of shares by individuals or institutions which are owned by historically disadvantaged people. So Sediko can go and buy 2 shares, 3 shares there, we mix them together with Sabelo and whoever, then that is for 20%. But community must own 5% and the employees must own 5%. This is for mining charter 3. And the mining charter 3 elements are not applicable to the mining rights holder who had their licenses before this mining charter 3 was enacted. So those who had their mining licenses before 2018 September, they are still being assessed using the mining charter 2, but they are given targets to make sure that they comply with the mining charter 3 when they are going to apply for a new mining right. I'm sure that that one is very clear. So you can't go now to a mine that has been operating and say, as a community now we want our 5%, or as employees now we want our 5%, because this mining charter is applicable to the new mining rights. In the old mining rights, the shareholding was about 26%. Let's look at the issue of mine community development. In terms of the mine community development, which is an element of the mining charter, it talks that it says the mine communities form an integral part of the mining development, which requires between mining and mine communities socio-economic development. So if a mine operates in a particular community, that community forms part, an integral part of the mining development. If you are mining in community A, that community A is an integral part of your mining development. Therefore, as a mine, in consultation with relevant municipalities, mine communities, traditional authorities, and affected stakeholders, you must identify development priorities of that mine community. If, for instance, you're operating in Soshanguve or Atteridgeville, As a mine, you must engage the municipality that is governing Atteridgeville. Engage the community of Atteridgeville. If there are traditional authorities in Atteridgeville, engage them. And other affected stakeholders, for you to be able to identify the needs of that community. And those needs, they must be in the prescribed and approved social labor plan of the mine right holder. So if you have got the mine, for the element of mine community, you must identify the needs of that host community. But when you identify those needs, you must do it in consultation with the municipalities, the very same community, the traditional authorities, and other affected stakeholders. Identify the needs of those communities and ensure that those needs find expressions in the social labor plan. The other thing that you should do is that as a mining right holder, those who are operating in the same area, because you may find that in other areas, you find 4, 3, 5 mines operating in the same area. What they should do is to collaborate on projects. For instance, if mine A wants to build a school, they can collaborate with mine B on the very same projects to ensure that they maximize resources and make sure that they implement projects that are of high impact. Another requirement on the mine community development is the element of the mining charter. It talks about your social labor plan must be a public document. A document that is a secret. It should be a public document published in English and also a dominant language in that community. And those copies must be accessed. You must put them in the libraries. You must also put them on your website. You must share them with the municipalities. You must share them with traditional authorities. You must share those documents of the SLP with affected communities. So it is a requirement. But it is the responsibility also from the DMR says, we have now developed projects. You must implement them 100%. If you have committed to build a school, you must build a school. If there are some issues that makes you not to build a school, you must apply through the department in what we call Section 102 of the MPRDA for you to change now the project. For instance, you have committed to build a clinic, and now the Department of Health is building a clinic. Let's build a clinic while the department is building a clinic. You can now go back to municipalities, the mine communities, the traditional authorities, and affected stakeholders and say, I've discovered that Department of Health is now building a clinic. We had planned a clinic. So I want us to divert this money to another project. So in consultation with those affected stakeholders, communities, traditional authorities, you can identify another project and apply to the department and say, I'm applying for Section 102 for me to remove this project from the SLP. Let's talk about inclusive procurement. In Mining Charter 3, the Mining Charter 3 on inclusive procurement talks about the mines must ensure that they procure 70% of locally manufactured mining goods with a 60% local content. So the goods that the mine must procure, 70% of those goods must be coming from South Africa. And 60% of those goods must be having the local content. And again, inclusive procurement says 60% of the procurement on the services must be procured from South African companies, local companies. Local here in terms of the mining charter, local talks South Africa. Also, the law inclusive procurement talks about research and development, says 70% of the research and development budget to be on South African-based research and development entities. If the mine is embarking on any research and activities, 70% of their total research budget must be spent on South African research entities. And when they have to do analysis of their minerals, maybe during exploration, the analysis, 100% of that analysis must be done in South Africa. So you can't take a sample here and go and analyze it in another country. I don't know what to make it. So the analysis must happen in this country. I hope you're still following me. I'm still trying to unpack the elements within the mining charter 3. But let me give you an overview of the South African mining sector, so that we can all be aligned, whether we have got enough mines here, whether we have got, because sometimes we talk, but let's get informed by the facts. But not on this one. This is the overview of South African mining sector. At the current moment, we have got 1,856 operating mines across the country. In the whole country, at the current moment, we have got 1,856 operating mines. And this is the data that I got from the website of the Department of Minerals, Resources and Energy. And I'm sure their data is not including what you call them artisanal mining, others I call them zamazamas. But the operating mines in the country, we've got 1,856 operating mines in the country. Most of those mines, 20% of those mines are in the Northwest. So 374 mines, operating mines, are in the Northwest. And they are followed by Northern Cape in terms of the highest. There are 360 operating mines in Northern Cape. Mpumalanga has got 235. Gauteng has got, Western Cape has got 198. Gauteng has got 188. Gauteng has got 179. The province with few mines, very few mines, is the Free State, got 78. So in total in this country, 1,800. They are mining different commodities. But let's look at the stakeholder mapping in South African mining sector. I said today's topic is going to look at stakeholder engagement, complexities, challenges, and opportunities in advancing socio-economic transformation in the mining sector. So look at the South African stakeholder mapping around the mining sector. And I did a graph to show you in terms of the mapping. This is a typical stakeholder mapping in South African mining sector. You have got the labor unions, you have got the employees, you have got the government and traditional authorities, you have got communities, we have got shareholders and clients. So you've got the key around 5 stakeholders. Within communities, you've got business people, interested groups, you've got various sectors and NPOs. They are all within communities. Within government, you've got different government departments and traditional authorities. employees are there as individuals. The labor unions, we have got those who are organizing within various sectors, and there's contestations. They contest for the right to organize. And I think we've got about 5 unions that are organizing in the mining sector in South Africa recently, and I stand to be corrected. Then we've got the shareholders and the clients. So this is a typical stakeholder mapping in South African mining sector. So the mine as a company has to engage with all these stakeholders. That's where now the complexities are coming. You've got the communities, you've got traditional leaders, you've got government, you've got employees, labor unions, shareholders, and the clients. And as a mine, you must engage with all this. And all these participants have got vested interest in your business. So this is a stakeholder mapping of a typical South African mining sector. But let's look at the complexities and the challenges. This is what I call complexities. You look at the red dot there is the mining company, and surrounded by all these stakeholders, with all having interest in the mine. This mine is sitting in an area called Extension 4. All these stakeholders will be surrounding that mine with interest. Communities, traditional leaders, government, employees, labor unions, the shareholders, and the clients that are buying that commodity. The mine as a company has to satisfy the needs of all these stakeholders. And when coming to government, there are various departments with various legislation that also regulate the mining. Even though the custodian of mining is the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, other departments like environment, they've got other legislation that are governing mining. So this is the complexities. So if you're doing stakeholder in mining, you must understand all these stakeholders that I've put them here, surrounding the mine. But what are the opportunities? Because we spoke about the MPRDA, we spoke about the Freedom Charter, we spoke about the mining charter element. I brought to you now the complexities of the stakeholders. But what are the opportunities that will assist us to advance socio-economic transformation? What are the opportunities? Firstly, there is a report that states that South Africa's total reserves in terms of the mineral wealth is estimated at 20.3 trillion. So this country's mineral reserves is estimated at 20.3 trillion rand. And some even said we can mine for the next 100 years. We've got so many mineral reserves that we can mine for the next 100 years. Yeah, we've got the world's largest reserves on manganese and the platinum group metals. And we've got the largest reserves of gold, diamonds, chromite ore, and vanadium. So we have got the mineral wealth in this country. And the report says that we can still mine for the next 100 years. These reserves worth over 20.3 trillion rand. I don't know how much is the budget of our government. I don't know. I don't think it's over 2 trillion. But here we're talking about 20.3 trillion of reserves. So we can mine for the next 100 years. We can use mining as an anchor for socio-economic transformation of our country. So this is an opportunity. There's complexities in terms of the stakeholder, but this is an opportunity now. You say, how do we collaborate to ensure that we tap into these 20.3 trillion reserves in our country? How do we ensure that we mine these reserves that are estimated at 20.3 trillion rand? How do we use our legislation to ensure that when we are mining these reserves, we address the socio-economic inequalities in this country? One day we need to look at, is the mining charter addressing the socio-economic inequalities? Today we are looking at the stakeholders' engagement complexities. One day we'll look at the how is the mining charter assisting in transforming the economic conditions of previously marginalized. But I want to bring to you to say, this is an opportunity. How do we work together as a society, the mining companies, the government, the traditional leaders, the shareholders, the labor unions, the employees that are there already, to ensure that we all benefit to the mining reserves of the mining in this country, and also tap into these new reserves, 20.3 trillion rand. And I said we can mine to the next 100 years in this country. I think the opportunity can only be created if we adopt what I want to call a spider web approach in advancing socio-economic transformation. I'll be taking hands a little bit later. I'm finishing with the page. There is something that I term a spider web approach in advancing socio-economic transformation. If you look at the spider web, all things are interconnected. One part is related to another. If you look at this, when I was presenting complexities, I did not join all these dots. But for now, deliberately I've joined these dots to say, if we adopt a spider web approach, we can advance socio-economic transformation using the mining as an anchor. For an example, the employees that are working at the mine, they are community members. Therefore, they must have the interest of the communities at heart. The communities that are not even employed in the mining, they are the key stakeholders. Therefore, they must have interest in what is happening in the mining. The mine itself is operating within a community. Therefore, it must have an interest on the socio-economic conditions of the community. The shareholders are benefiting from the mine operating in a community. Therefore, they must have an interest on the activities, socio-economic activities in that community. The labor unions are organizing in a mine that is operating in a community. So the labor unions should have an interest in what is happening in that community in terms of socio-economic development. The government is regulating the mine that is operating in the community. The government must have interest on the socio-economic development of the community. The government is regulating the mine that benefits the shareholders. Government must have interest on what are these shareholders, how much are these shareholders gaining from this mine. The mine is regulating, the government is regulating the mine that is operating within a community. Therefore, the government must have interest on how are these labor unions being regulated and organized. The government must also have interest on the welfare of the employees within the mine. The traditional authorities also must have the same interest in communities, the same interest in the employees, the labor unions, the shareholders. So if we adopt a spider web approach in advancing socio-economic transformation, we can tap into the opportunities that are there. We can now go and say we've got reserves of the 20.3 trillion rand that we can mine. But for now, we are just scattered. We are not interconnected. everyone is approaching one another as an individual, pushing the individual interest. There is no interconnection. I'm about to close. I want to thank you for listening to me. I'm going to take questions. And for those who want this presentation, you can just drop your emails now. I can send you this presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me. Now we can take questions. Thank you so much. I can see the hand of Utsepeng. Utsepeng, the first question comes from you. You are on mute, Utsepeng.
Greetings, everyone.
Greetings, Utsepeng.
Today I'm going to be a little bit out of hand, if I can say that.
Yeah, it's fine.
I think
let's engage.
there are certain times when an individual needs to be a little bit radical to address certain
engage,
matters.
I'm interested in dealing with that. And my colleagues who are participating.
You know, I've been doing a little bit of research regarding mining industries because I have been involved for about 3 years now. And what I realized is that the mining operations or mining companies, they operate differently. And I'm saddened by corruption. It saddens me very much that there are individuals in the mining industry who actually care about the communities, about the employees.
An echo. I don't know if my colleagues can hear you. It's okay.
Greetings, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me clearly, but I needed us to address corruption in the mining industry because there are many people, especially stakeholders, that care about the communities, about the employees, about the entire mining industry. And there are those who are there to benefit personally. And what saddens me the most is that the people who are supposed to take care of the little people are the ones who are benefiting the most. I'm not going to talk about a lot of mines, but I'm going to talk about where I come from. I'm not entitled to mention names and everything, but I'm just going to state facts. Where I come from, it's a very small village of less than 200 people as a population. But as much as they are less than 200, 50 or 60% of those people are underprivileged. They still stay in shacks or cracked houses. Yet there's a very huge mine in the area. And the stakeholders that are willing to develop the community, the employees, they are being oppressed where I'm coming from. They are not given the fair treatment and opportunities that I feel that they deserve. And you find that a stakeholder, for instance, they come from, let's say, KZN or Limpopo. We are in the Northwest. They bring their own people that they feel that they trust more than others. We no longer employ people based on their qualifications. We employ people based on friendship, based on family relations and everything. Companies no longer care about their communities. You know, where I'm working, the company is making profits, tons of profits, but yet our community members are struggling, our employees are struggling. So such a company, you do not even know how to approach it, because the moment you raise your voice, you are being oppressed. I personally experienced oppression when I started to raise my hand, when I started to express my views and feelings towards the company. But by God's grace, I'm still standing and I'm still working for the company. And it's not only the company that's oppressing employees and the community, but the Department of Mineral Resources as well. Instead of doing things according to procedures, to protocols, they come into the mining industry. They know that they've got responsibilities at home. They accept bribes. How do we expect Black people to grow, to transform, and for communities to develop while every individual looks at their own personal interests? We can talk about transformation. We can talk about socio-economic transformation. We can talk about a lot of things that need to benefit the community and the employees. But as long as stakeholders, management, and the Department of Mineral Resources, they're looking at their own personal interests, we will never get anywhere as a country. I believe that a lot of people could have been far in life because of their education, their potential to grow, but they are being oppressed by the same people who are supposed to help them grow. The Labor Relations Act, we can talk about the Constitution, we can talk about the mining rights, the mining charter, everything. But unfortunately, those are documents that we only produce when we want to look innocent. When when they say practice what you preach, many people never practice that. They preach transformation, they preach development, but they do not implement it. Ndate Rakolote, I'm very saddened by where I'm coming from. I wish one day the Department of Mineral Resources or stakeholders or mine management directors and everyone can actually come and visit the community where they are mining. If ever they've got conscience, they will be ashamed of themselves. Because this mine has been operating before I was even born. But yet you think that it has been operating for the past 2 months. There is no development, there is no transformation, nothing. So that's the sad part.
No, thank you, Tepen. Let's take Sabelo. We'll all respond to these things. I'm not going to be the only one responding. Let's take Sabelo. Sabelo, you're on mute.
Thanks. Do you want to see me?
No, it's fine. You can continue without seeing you, my brother.
Okay. Thanks, my brother. I think, firstly, we need to acknowledge that in a class-divided society like this one of ours, views that are always predominant are always that of a ruling class. And in this instance, South Africa, we are a capitalist state, and the ruling class will continue with exploitation until we take a particular posture in South Africa. And I don't think it's going to assist us to continue crying or complaining, but what we rather do is to provide solutions. Comrade Sediko, thanks for bringing this kind of debate to the public so that we get as many views as we could. But what I think we need to acknowledge first is, one, the mining industry has been left to the hands of the few for a very long time. And we will continue to have the industry being in the hands of the few if we do not capacitate our brothers and sisters who are given a responsibility to lead in the community in the form of councillors, MMCs, and those that are in your province and national. Next year, we will be going to the local government elections. And in 2022, we are expected to review the current mining charter. And people that will be engaging on the reviewal of the mining charter in 2022, it's people who will have only a year in the office. Of course, I'm not undermining any individual, but I can assure you very few who will have information in as far as mining issues are concerned. And when you are having such challenges, it means that mining bosses and companies, they will continue exploiting our brothers and sisters, those that are working. They will continue to exploit and do away with our minerals and go and invest somewhere. What I think we need to do, political parties must start to participate and capacitate communities where we are staying. Because the mining companies, they will not do anyone a favor by capacitating communities in preparing them for the future. There is also a need for both government and unions to hold hands so that when you are approaching mining companies, at least you have got information. But the challenge that you are having, I always prefer, Comrade Sediko, when I'm saying it in Xhosa, ingxaki esinayo, iinkokheli esizikhethayo ngamanye amaxesha ziye zizingele ziphethe ityiwa, zilibale ngokubana zikhethwe ukumela abantu, but represent their own jackets and their own families. And that has got a huge potential to compromise the livelihood of our people. So it must start with the communities by electing the right people. It must start with our communities to do the right thing, to know what is in their hands. I mean, you have mentioned huge numbers. If you have got more than 100 years that you are still going to mine in South Africa, we can change many lives in our country. So we need to start by capacitating unions. We need to start by capacitating our communities. Those that are in offices, in government, they must also do the right thing. I think also there is many community structures now. And community structures, they are sometimes a threat to themselves because they do not really represent what they appear to be fighting for in the eyes of the public. But once somebody has been given something, he or she forgets that it was a mandate that he was given or she was given. So the people's lives and capacity and what they are looking for must be always at material times be what we prioritize. I think we have got very good documents in South Africa. You have got your MPRDA, your mining charter that talks about your employment equity, Labor Relations Act that are guiding us in as far as the direction that we should be taking. So if we start now preparing for 2022, I do not foresee the challenges that you have mentioned here. In your stakeholders or in your stakeholder mapping, Comrade Sediko, I didn't see the, of course you have mentioned the investors, but the banking sector, you did not mention there, and it's playing a critical role. And one of the biggest challenges for those that are in business or small enterprise development, the funding for them remain the biggest challenge. And the capacity there, therefore, it's also a critical challenge. And mining companies, in most instances, they are not doing as much as they should be doing in as far as capacitating and preparing and transferring the skills is concerned. Because we are always told that, no, we can't give you a business because you do not have a required skill. and there's no shop that sells a particular skill. It must be the responsibility of the big companies to transfer skill to small industries. But you can't do that if there's no participation of government. There's no one who's forcing big companies to participate and develop our people. That is why I'm saying the role of the unions, the role of our government is very critical in this instance. It's a pity that I'm not going to stay long in this discussion. I've got another engagement in the next 4 minutes. I'm not going to stay. I was looking forward to the engagements, but thanks for inviting me. I hope that this is not the first and the last engagement. I will continue to participate. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you, Sabelo. And thanks for participating, my brother. And I know you have got passion around this industry. We'll talk more. Thank you so much. There is a hand of Utepeng again. Let's now bring solutions. Let's talk solutions. Let's talk solutions. Yes, Utepeng?
Discussing solutions.
Yes,
we need to, yes, sir. When we discuss solutions, I believe that we are being failed by our so-called leaders. So I feel that it will be appropriate if ever we actually discuss with the communities as a whole. We discuss with the employees as a whole. If ever we have a personal interaction with our surrounding communities, with our unions, with our employees, then we are going to know and understand the needs that are highly needed by the people so that we can help them transform and grow, whether as individuals or as communities. So from my own personal point of view, I feel that if ever every single individual can have access to, for instance, a director or a specific stakeholder, we are going to understand the community and individual needs. So for solutions, I feel that we need to have quarterly or trimester meetings with the communities, whereby they raise their grievances, we note them down, and then we take time to evaluate everything. Once we have a resolution, we cannot address everything at once, but a single step at a time. I bring you 10 problems. If you resolve one this year, it's better than nothing. The following year, another one. That way, there's going to be transformation. There's going to be development. There's going to be growth. So my suggestion, my idea is that we need to engage with individuals, not people who can accept bribes or look at their own personal interests. And then another thing that I believe that is going to work for everyone is that if ever we are self-consciousness, we care about everyone else. If we know that a specific leader cares more about themselves personally, or the certain department like the mineral resources or whatever, we challenge those people. There are anti-corruption hotlines and everything, but we do not use them because we gain from them. So can we please consider people and communities' needs? And if ever we engage with everyone in our surroundings, there's going to be growth in our lives. I believe that every Black person should be rich today. Africa is a very rich continent. We were not supposed to be poor, or we were not supposed to be suffering. So I believe that we need to start engaging with everyone in our surroundings, with the people in our lives. We learn from one another. It doesn't matter the age. What matters is the background. Every individual has a different experience and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tsepe. Thank you so much. We can take other comments from other people. We are going to close at 1. It's 1 hour now. You can take comments, inputs from other people. Raise up your hand if you want to talk something. The absence of inputs from others. Let me close by saying, and borrow the words from Sabelo. We can't transform the issues of economy if we are not united. I've never seen any community or a society transforming issues of economy not being united. Those who owns this means of production, they are united, highly united. But those who are fighting for space to participate are disconnected. And what disconnect them are the crumbs. Let me call them the crumbs. They will give one a 10 rand, the other one 15, and another 2 rand. Then they get divided. So you can't transform an economy with a divided society. It is the responsibility of all of us. Employees, labor unions, the communities, the traditional leaders, the government, to unite and transform so that all of us can benefit from the socio-economic development that will be championed through the mind. But as long as we are still scattered, as long as you elect the people who are not going to represent you properly when they're in council or in government, as long as we don't take issues of transformation head on, even if it means losing our own personal things, we will never win the battle. So with those words, I also want to reiterate that what I was presenting here is the views from Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. They are not the views of any company that I might be working for. These are my personal views as a founder and a trustee of Progressive Socio-Economic Investment Institute. Thank you so much for participating. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Comrade Sediko. We will wait for the next invite.
Yes, thank you so much.
I wish you all the best in the future transformations and everything. And I hope we engage some more because we learn a lot.
Yeah, we'll engage with the Thank you so much.
Thank you.